Good afternoon, everyone. I unmuted myself. It's a modern day miracle. Welcome to Focus On with the Alexander Valley Film Society. My name is Catherine Hecht, and I'm your host. And I'm coming at you today live from my virtual studio here in Cloverdale, California. Today, we are joined by my old high school pal, screenwriter Tom Vaughan, who co-wrote Winchester and has lots of fun things to share with us about that and other things about his illustrious career. And before we get started, I want to take a moment and thank sponsors for today's show. Thank you to Alain Martin Pioret and Johnny Drake, your compass in a complex real estate market. And our dear ones, Ron and Jane Pavelka of Pavelka and Associates. Thank you both so much for making this happen. So a little housekeeping. We're streaming live over Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. And if you ever want to sign up for updates, you can go to YouTube and subscribe to our page, and you'll get an email when we go live. So we get to offer this series on Sundays at 2 p.m. and occasionally during the week. But on Sundays at 2 p.m., this remains a complimentary program for all of our listeners and viewers, and it's because of our sponsors and donors. So if you like this program, if you like the guests that we're bringing on and the ideas that we're exploring, please consider making a contribution today to the Alexander Valley Film Society. I'm going to put up our website so you can see it there. You can go to avfilmsociety.org, go straight to the donate page and make a contribution that way. That's avfilmsociety.org. Okay, so without further ado, I'm really excited to bring in Tom. We had some time to catch up before the show, and we're not going to recap all of that. We're going to just talk about the juicy, fun stuff that you guys would be interested in. So please help me welcome my friend, Tom Vaughan. Hello, Tom.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. What is this tint you got going on? Like this little... the rose lighting, the fancy, dramatic, like you got a production designer.
Yes. Like we were talking earlier, some of us have been working remotely and Zooming for a lot longer than COVID. And so when I busted out a couple of like really cheap floodlights that I got on Amazon, like $15 a piece, people were like, oh my God, what's happening in your studio?
Yeah, I gotta get a gel for this. Make it very dramatic.
It is. And I can, you know what, for effect, I will even do a quick change.
You can do it from your desk?
From my phone.
From your phone.
And we're very professional here, Tom, so thank you for joining us.
I wish you warned me. I feel like I'm not bringing anything to this thing.
Oh my God.
I'm already slacking.
Let's dispense with all of this and get straight to the point. Can we please talk about this movie, Winchester?
Yes. Lead me the way. What would you like to know? Well,
first of all, so we encourage everybody to watch these films leading up to our chats, right? So my husband and I recently watched the film again. And first of all, Helen Mirren. So do you tell us a little bit about your process with the script? I know that you have strong feelings about how it turned out, but when did you first start writing the story?
I was hired to write it. There was through a chain of events, the producer brought me in to pitch, and they had a hard time finding the right writer that they got excited about. So basically, in the pitch, you come in and it's 30, 40-minute meeting total. I think you pitch usually about 15, 20 minutes, and the rest are questions and conversations and small talk. But I came in and pitched for what I thought the movie should be. So I just did a lot of research within a week, tried to figure out what was the best angle to come in. A lot of people were pitching modern day versions of it, people going into the house modern day. but my feeling was that it was Sarah Winchester's story. It was her story rather than the house's story. And so the reason why I got the job, I think I was the 31st or 32nd writer they had talked to.
Whoa.
And I got the job mainly because I wanted to focus on Sarah Winchester. And the challenge from that is that you come in from a story standpoint. You also know what kind of budget you're going to have, what kind of market you're going to have, like trying to figure out what is the best way to tell a great story and still produce a product that is going to pay people's rent, that people aren't going to lose money off of. So it was the general sense that while Sarah Winchester was clearly the most interesting story, the horror supernatural market is mostly driven by younger audiences. So we needed younger characters to be the entryway into the house and into Sarah's life. And so she would be a very strong supporting character, but not necessarily the lead. And originally the character was written to be much younger. And then over drafts that became later on. And then we shot the film in Australia. We didn't shoot it. We only shot a couple of days on the Winchester lot.
Are the producers Australian? Sorry to interrupt.
Ultimately, the directors were.
Oh, so okay.
The directors came in and rewrote and what we originally wanted with the movie. And then the directors come on board and they have their own thoughts and their own thought, like, well, this kind of interests us more. So we're gonna rewrite it more to fit what we want to do. And I was off the project at that point. So, but the idea of coming in, focusing on her, the basic storyline of the Winchester company sending a psychiatrist to visit with Sarah Winchester to see if she is sane or not, to declare her insane so they can take her out of control of the company and do what they want. That was the basic premise that I went in and I pitched and said, this is the story that I'd like to tell.
And so how did it start? I'm sorry, say that one more time, Tom. Sorry.
So that's how it started, and that's like how my 2-year journey on it was.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask. Is so by the time you stepped with the project, you had been working on it for 2 years?
I think I was on it about 2 years, and then the Spirigs came on and they worked on it for about 2 years, and then they went into production. So it was a long process, just before we actually saw it in theaters.
And is that a typical? Is that a typical trajectory in terms of what you experienced? What's that?
For features, yeah, it's fairly. I have a film going up next year, and I wrote that script in 2008.
Okay, well, but now, so did you pitch that script, or was this your idea and your ball of wax?
The one for next year?
Yeah,
I wrote that one on spec.
Okay, so that's what kind of the next question I had is, so you were hired as a writer, so they knew they wanted to do a story about the Winchester house, or what was
people had been trying to get the rights to the Winchester house for years, and for some reason the people who owned the house kept saying no. And for reasons that I never did understand, one producer managed to get them to say yes. And so he got the rights to the movie and then made a deal with a small financing company. And then they said, all right, we'll finance the script. We'll pay for a writer to write the script. But now we all have to find approval on what story we want to write about. And so the stories that came in were, a movie within a movie, people staying the night, people sneaking into the winch. They were all very focused on the house itself.
Yeah.
And while the house is entertaining, the story is Sarah Winchester. And I think, again, I think that's what attracted and appealed to the producers when I got hired.
And so, Tom, where does it start to depart from you in terms of what you envisioned and what ended up happening?
I would say the first 30 minutes are largely mine. And then it starts to take some slightly different directions. And then the last act, I would say, is none of that is mine. But kind of the character setups, those are all mine. The dynamics of everything are all mine. And the Spearigs, what they were interested in was more of a slow burn. They wanted, and this is like a really interesting question, because what we wrote, we were looking much more for a James Wan, younger audience, big scare movie. Like, just really like Conjuring 2, Insidious. And there's an interesting story on The Conjuring, because we were developing this movie when The Conjuring came out, and it affected the dynamics of everything. But the Spearigs were less interested in that and wanted much more of a slow burn, more interested in jump scares and now it wasn't necessarily what interested me, but would Helen Mirren have done more of a spook fest, like more ghost? Would she have done more hardcore scares? Would that have attracted her as much as more of the slow? And I'm not sure that it would have. So, because what got the movie over the hump into production was Helen Mirren saying, "Yes, I will do this movie." So, like, there's just so many moving pieces.
Well, yeah, and this part, all the moving pieces are I could talk about this forever. I find it fascinating. So when did she become attached to the project? Were you still involved?
I was not involved. She was using the Spearig script. They had sent her script or their script, and she said yes. And then as soon as she said yes, it just started moving forward to get financed. And shooting in Australia reduced the budget considerably. And they had a lot of tax incentives to do that. But then you need to do, more like approved actors that are within the Commonwealth, whether it's Australia or Canada or the UK or, whatever it is. So and then we got Jason Clarke and Sarah Snook. And then, they're all so good in it, whether Sarah Snook's utilized properly in this, I don't know. She doesn't have as much to do. And that's just more to do about, how good she is. If you have Sarah Snook, then, you start, all right, let's do more with this part because we got Sarah Snook. Let's take advantage of this. And then I thought Jason Clarke was so good in it. So the actors we got, I thought it was pretty. We got really fortunate with the cast.
I couldn't agree more. Jason Clarke is never bad. He's never bad. And Sarah Snook, are you watching Succession?
I am not. But my wife and I are going to that's our next hour-long show we're going to watch.
Oh my gosh, it is so Shakespearean. I don't know if that's really your taste, but she's terrific in it. So good.
It's King Lear with Murdoch, right? Isn't it? It's King Lear. That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly. So right. So Tom, it's not the product you envisioned, but it's out in theaters. It's got your name on it. What is that experience like?
Yeah, that part was really fun. Because I think it was my 7th movie, but it was the first movie of mine that went wide in the theaters. So that was so much fun, and I was able to, go with my nieces and my mom and my brother and all of us go see this movie in the theaters.
That's so cool.
That part was really, really great. And I was visiting my mom in Texas. I'm back in Texas, but I was living in LA at the time and visiting my mom, and there's commercials for the movie on TV while we're watching TV. I mean, like that's wonderful. I'll have that memory the rest of my life, you know.
Oh.
And a lot of Helen Mirren's lines that she had in the marketing campaign were lines that I had wrote. So that was also particularly fun.
And did you meet with the cast at any point? And
well, I was off the project. I got to see an early preview of it, and you know, large creatively. And it's been a while since the movie came out. Like when the movie comes out, you don't want to say anything public. You just want to support the movie, and
of course,
you know, you're just like let's get this thing going. And but it's been creatively, it was kind of a disappointment considering the brain trust that was involved. You know, like we had so many good people, and the Spearigs are talented, and they're so good, and the producers are good, and the cast is beyond belief. And for whatever reason, it didn't match our hopes creatively. You know, of like what we really wanted it to be. But I also remember I was in Vegas when it opened. I was there with my now wife. We weren't married, but we were in Vegas, and I started reading the reviews the Friday morning, and they were ferocious. The reviews are so bad.
Yeah.
The critics hated this movie, and I was thinking, you know, it didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. It is not as, you know. I guess I was predicting maybe like a 45 or 50% tomato meter. You know, I'd seen the movie. 10-15% rotten, and you know, like the critics seemed like to have they were mad we made the movie. So that was kind of a shocking. Yeah, so I remember like that morning going, is my career over? Is my like this bad? Like can you survive having a movie with reviews this bad? Can you? Within a week I was fine. You know, well, within a couple of days, but just the emotional roller coaster of it, of like, we're making a movie, Helen Mirren's in it, and then it's getting made. Oh, well, I don't know if I like this movie that much. Look, these commercials. Oh, the critics hate it. Oh,
oh my gosh, but it's such a reminder. I mean, I've talked to so many people in this process of starting the Film Society and talking to filmmakers, and it is just a Christmas miracle every time a film makes it to the big screen. And if it's anywhere close to the vision it started, I mean, it's just like a unicorn.
Yeah, it is. That is when you get like the bad experiences come in, you remind yourself of how lucky are we that a movie got released enough to get this many bad reviews. You know, like how fortunate is this? I've been in this business over 20 years, and I had seven films made. Like it's a miracle every time. It's a miracle. There's a lot of people in this business just as long and never got a movie made. So one every 3 years, one every 4 years is not too shabby. You know, just being really, really grateful for this opportunity, and what a great ride this is. And just never, ever, ever forget to enjoy it, because when all is said and done, it doesn't really matter that much. You know, like it doesn't. Right. You know, like you've got your family, you've got things that matter, and then you got stuff that don't. And the reviews don't matter. You know, getting movies made, the work matters. The reviews don't.
That's
matter.
Right. That's right. Getting it made and the work itself. Is there anything that came out of the project, whether it was a relationship or what did anything positive?
Oh, so much. So much.
Like what did it turn into for you?
Well, just on the purely professional matter, you know, the producers that I met, that I worked with, and you know, we were talking earlier in my career, I was just a big old drunk and wasn't wasn't that pleasant to work with and was very insecure, and compensated that insecurity with
Michelle.
Hey, Michelle. Hello, Michelle. And it just wasn't easy to work with. Would argue a lot, debate, wasn't a collaborator, had my vision, and anyone who didn't agree with that vision wasn't as smart as I am. Just someone you don't want to work with. And I very rarely worked with producers twice, and I don't blame them. And then just with my life and growing up, and I was a late bloomer. I didn't start growing up until about 32. So, and then now working with people and working with them 2 or 3 times, and having a great experience working with them, and them having a great experience working with me, and then let's do it again. Let's do it on something else. What's next? Both the producers on that project, I'm working on another one with them, and then the next one, we think we've got Queen Mary going, the Queen Mary horror story, hopefully be in production next year, and that's with one of the producers of Winchester. And
oh, that's so cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah, so creating those relationships and finding people you like to work with, and people that like to work with you. It's just another thing of just being grateful, because you work with a lot of people that aren't that much fun.
Yeah.
And as you get older, it becomes more and more important of, I don't want to work with those people. And also realizing I was one of those people didn't want to work with, like, yeah. Oh, too short for Tom Vaughan. I don't think I want to, who's next? Let's talk to somebody else. So it gives me both perspectives of like, I don't want to work with anyone like I was, like life's too short. Life's too short to work with people like me.
But Tom, something you said really, it's a perfect segue into the next thing I want to ask you about, because we talk to our young people through our educational work a lot about relationships and about maintaining healthy relationships, respectful relationships. You never know who's going to be on the other side of that desk, or what you're going to need, who you're going to need it from, when you get older. And you have done quite a bit of teaching in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started teaching on a whim. Somebody asked me to do it, and I've always felt like there were so many people teaching screenwriting who had no business teaching screenwriting. I was like, do I want to be one of those people who potentially could be someone who has no business teaching screenwriting? And so I tried it out, and I discovered that I was pretty good at communicating these ideas. My teacher, my playwriting teacher was Edward Albee, who was, a genius of geniuses, and 3 Pulitzer Prizes for drama, and was so much more gifted than I'll ever be, so much more talented. And I don't take any embarrassment of that. He's more, he's Edward Albee. He's more talented than we'll ever, and most of us will ever be, except for like a few people. So one of the gifts that he gave me more than anything else was confidence that I could do this. That was like his greatest gift to me, because Edward, God bless him, he passed away, obviously. But Edward was not a gifted teacher. And the reason why Edward was not a gifted teacher is because Edward was so damn talented. Edward never needed to ask himself why he did something. He just had the gift to do it. And so when you asked him why he does certain things, he didn't really have all the answers. He was just, well, that's better. This way, this works. And dialogue is music. And for him, that makes sense. But you're like, I don't know. I don't know if there's music either. What do I do with that? Yeah. So luckily for my students, I am not as gifted as Edward Albee. And I had to figure out why I made choices, and why I did this, and why was this better, and I think this is better because of this, and And when I switched from playwriting to screenwriting, I attacked it very mathematically. I attacked it with structure, that I knew that that was my way in to understand this. And so I was self-taught as a screenwriter by mostly just watching movies and breaking down their structures. And, we were talking about high school, of like learning how to get an objective and spend endless hours to achieve it. And I knew how to do that. Like I knew how to dedicate myself to this thing and pursue it. And so when I switched to screenwriting, I had a friend in Austin, and she owned a video store, her and her husband. And I'd go there at 8:30, half hour before closing, and anything that wasn't rented out, I could take home as a favor.
Wow.
And so I was just churning out movies and breaking down their structures. Minute 5, this happens. Minute 10, this happens. Minute 15, this happens. And looking at all the similarities and looking at how stories are actually quite simple. When you watch them as a movie, they seem very complicated because there's so much stuff going on, and there's a big reversal and then another reversal, and it looks complicated. I could never do that. But when you actually break it down on paper, you see how simple it is. You see how simple these stories really are, and that the reversals you see are just basic on what we believed was true. We find out this is true. And so because I was attacking it so mathematically and creating diagrams and figuring this out, that it allowed me that when I started teaching, here is the actual process by which I learned this. And as a teacher, you can't teach talent, and that's where Edward was like, all talent. The actual aspects of screenwriting are a lot of craft, and then the talent comes in, and how honest can you be? Like, how are those moments? All those little moments you create are where the art is and the talent comes from. And you can push people to demand more from themselves out of those moments. But you can't teach them how to invent them. You can't teach them to know an honest moment and a fake moment and what's going to surprise and delight an audience and what isn't. And so when I teach screenwriting, I focus purely on what is teachable, and then encourage and push to not settle for standard stuff, for the stuff that's really is a writer bringing themselves, an artist coming to the process. And one of the things I repeat a lot of we're all so different. We can all go home with the exact same structure of a story and then come back with completely different scripts. Because what makes one person laugh, what makes one person scared, what makes one person like chills up their spine, what one person finds curious and interesting, and like those are all completely different. And that's where the artistry comes from. But the structure is actually mostly problem solving. That's much more of a problem solving aspect of like, how do I do more with less? How do I surprise and delight? And that's why to this day, I still find screenwriting such a challenge. I've written, I can't even remember how many scripts I've written, but It's still always because there's always new problems. There's always new challenges, and there's always new things that you want to explore. Like my last horror movie I wrote was based on a couple sending their 8-year-old child to a private school. And they were bringing them to what they didn't know was a cult. And so it was just all based on these new fears that I have getting married and having an 8-year-old stepchild and my fear and interest in cults. And so it was all, and this was a script that I just simply could not have written 3 years ago. But now my life has changed and things have changed, and now I can write this script.
And Tom, what is behind you on your cork boards? Is that a script in process?
Yeah, that is actually a job I did not get. I haven't taken it off the board, but that was a pitch. That was the structure of a pitch, and I did it online. I think about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't gone on to the next project yet. So, but yeah, this is a way I can keep outline of two projects at once And then over here is what I call the boneyard, which has a lot of ideas and scene ideas and character ideas that I can move over from there and put it onto like the middle board.
I want to show a question here. Blake Hafner is writing and says, do you use any programs to help you map out storyline, storyboard your scripts?
I don't do a lot of storyboarding, but sometimes I would definitely just take a sheet of paper and try to break down the structure of a scene of like, this has to happen, this has to happen. How do I make this interesting? I find to this day, I've tried to use programs, but I think most writers continually fall back on the physical corkboard and the index cards for scenes. And I write in 8 sequences and 4 acts and 8 sequences. And each, you can see up here, like each one of these top cards is a sequence. So that's about a 12 to 14 page sequence. And I write in 8 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and each 2 sequences is an act. So I write in Act 1, Act 2A, Act 2B, and Act 4 or Act 3. It's really Act 4, but if you say Act 4, no one knows what you're talking about. So we divide Act 2, what is traditionally Act 2, into 2 separate acts, 2A and 2B, because the midpoint is a dividing. And do not see Act 2 as a single act. It's actually 2 acts together. And that will get people confused a lot. But the midpoint is crucial.
So Tom, I'm mindful of our time here, but I want to get back to the writer for hire piece. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about, I'm sorry, I'm tripping on my words. You just said you're not sure how many screenplays you've written. How many have you sold?
Sold that I wrote on spec and then sold.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number, but I would guess 8 or 9, maybe around that territory. Maybe around that territory. And sometimes you don't always sell them outright. Sometimes you just option them and you make a nice payment and then you get paid to rewrite it and then you get the script back. But I also have some scripts that I sold that I'll never get back. You know, like somebody owns them. I'll never see them again. They've paid me. I no longer own them.
And we won't always see those on your IMDb page, right?
No, normally not. No, particularly if it's one of the older projects. Now the IMDb is pretty good as far as like they'll see something in the trades, and then it will go on your IMDb page as in development or something like that, or pre-production or whatever, and then it could be there for eternity, even though like the project is completely and totally dead, just dead as a doornail, will never be revived. But it will be on your IMDb permanently as if it's a still very active and potentially up and coming project.
But Queen Mary is in production or is in production.
Yeah, Queen Mary, the hope is to be in production pretty soon. Actually, I think we'll find out in the next week whether it's a definite go this year.
Tom, I hope so. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's really fun. And that's one that somebody else wrote it. The first draft. I came in to rewrite them. Mm-hmm. The director came on. I got fired. The director now did a draft. Mm-hmm. And then the director brings me back in again to rewrite that draft. And now we're taking that draft and going into production. And that's happened to me once before where I have been fired off a project. I had one. In fact, it was the very first script I ever made money off of. They were going to go into production and they fired me off the project. They brought in another writer to rewrite me. And then they hired a director to direct the movie and not know that I was working with that director on another movie. And he said, well, Tom wrote this? Oh yeah, Tom back on. Bring it. And then the producers were like, no, we don't want Tom. We fired Tom. Like Tom's just going to go back to his previous draft. Why would we bring? But then Marcos was like, nope, he's my guy. So they brought me on, and I rewrote the writer that rewrote me. And then on top of that, that director didn't like the actor they hired, and so he left. And then they brought in a new director, and then that director and me did another draft on it together.
Gosh, it's a big recipe.
Yeah, the dynamics again, and this is why we go back to what we were saying earlier of like anytime a movie gets made, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
And now it's just getting harder and harder because the studios are, just focusing on a very specific brand of movies they're making. And then we'll see like this time next year of like, where is the movie business with COVID?
Yeah. And what do you think? Any thoughts?
I think we'll come back. I really do. I think we'll figure out a way, I just feel like the movie going experience, if it was going to die, it would have died already. It will shift and it will change and it will be what it needs to be given the circumstances. But we like going to movies,
Yeah.
We just do. We like going to movies.
I'm heartened to hear you say that.
Yeah. So I figure we'll figure out a way to do it. Where there's money to be made, people will do it. And the biggest threat to the movies is usually the studios, because the studios don't like sharing their money with people. And so they're going to try to figure out ways, like Disney's notorious for it, of like, how do we cut out all these other people that are making money with us? And they shortened the home video market, they shortened that because they were trying to figure out ways to like cut out the middleman. And just like with Netflix, they was like, Netflix is making money off of us. We should be making money off of this.
Right.
So dominant in the box office space. Like what they decide to do can be, but one of my hopes is that they'll start to be more dynamic range of prices, where seeing some of these smaller movies is not costing the same amount of money as seeing, Captain America Part 6. So like that would be $15, and they're giving you a show, they're giving you a ride, they're giving you $250 million of spectacle. You'll pay $15, wear 3D glasses, the kids will go. But it's hard for a couple, older that wants to go see a character piece that they could probably see at Netflix at home and pay $30 plus parking. But if you say $7 to see this smaller movie that really only costs this much money, I think that starts to become more appealing to them. And maybe that's how you get adults to come back to the movies.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that idea floated, and that's always made sense to me. Like, it never made sense to me that all movies cost the exact same amount of money when they all cost the same to make.
Right. Oh, Tom, you're smart. You're a smart guy. Well, listen, we have had you and I can keep talking and talking and talking.
Yes.
But we like to do a little bit of a lightning round on our way out with our guests. So
yes.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Do I win anything?
Yes, you're here. This is the prize.
You already won.
So, okay. Tom Vaughan, very serious.
Okay.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, black coffee.
Oh, black, of course, naturally. Woods or beach?
Beach.
Okay. Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
Okay. And for you, a special one, LA or Texas?
Oh my goodness. I'm surprised you'd even ask. Always Texas. Texas. Go Cougs.
Texas. Our Texas. Do you remember the Bearcat song, by the way?
I don't.
I don't
I mention every time there's a high school in any script of mine, it's Klein High School.
Oh, good.
Constantly. I'm kind of creating my own character universe of Flying High School.
Well, Tom, is there anything you, on your way out of the studio here, anything you would say to a young person getting involved in writing or the business?
Yeah, I guess probably just give up your nights. Like that. It's such a competitive field. It is such a competitive field. And you're competing against like trust fund babies and old successful directors' sons who have all the time in the world to write. And I really honestly believe a big part of what pushed my career forward was my terrible insecurity and my belief that I was not worth loving if I did not have a successful screenwriting career. And what that did, as unhealthy and sick as that was, what that did was it kept me home Friday nights writing. That when other people were out drinking, having a good time, I was home Friday night working. And when I was living in New York and I was too tired after work to write, I'd wake up at 6 a.m. to write because I was and I still think my work level was probably about medium. There's people that are going to have to work harder than I did. And there's a lot of people who didn't have to work that hard. So I'm fortunate that I'm somewhere in the middle, but assume everyone else has an easier path than you, and you have to outwork them, and you have to give up some stuff to outwork them, because it's the one thing you can control. Is the one thing you can control attitude and effort. That's two things. There's two things you can control. I'm a writer. My math's not so good, but those are things you control: is attitude and effort. So that's always my advice.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I'm so glad to reconnect with you face-to-face-ish. And thank you for supporting my work and the work of the Film Society and for being here. So we're going to keep tabs on you, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, and consider me a friend of the Society and the festival, and anything you ever need, just always let me know.
Thank you so much, Tom.
All right.
Well, take care. And for the rest of you, happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us yet again. And if it's your first time, we hope you'll come back and see us again next Sunday at 2 p.m. PST, that's Pacific time. And in the meantime, take care of one another, wear your mask, stay safe, stay sane, and stay connected. Thanks, everybody.